How's that? Is that working now? Is that working now? I hope there it goes. Yeah, I got it. It's sometimes this thing changes from it changes from my nice um mic to whatever. It does whatever it wants to do. And I was just saying how I'm super excited. We get these questions about leading up versus leading down or aside. And I always hate saying like leading down because it makes it seem like as a leader you're far superior than others, and you're not actually. That's a misconception. But that's all right. That's the way that this whole thing works. And we're kicking off this like new series where we're just talking about um igniting our leadership potential, right? And it's kind of funny we use that word because sometimes we can get a little complacent. Sometimes we can just start riding the days, and somebody needs to come around and light that spark. And that's really what we do. And we're really focusing this first session on, hey, guess what? You're leading, you just don't know it yet. Or maybe you're leading and you just don't see it, right? Sometimes you might hear this say, hey, you're leading from your seat, wherever that seat may be, with or without title. But I'm so glad you're here. Before we really dive in, I just want to tell you about this moment that I realized that I was already a leader, and it wasn't a pretty situation, right? It was several years ago. I wasn't a manager or a supervisor. I didn't even have this title, right? I was just kind of there, just doing my job, doing my thing. I was on a team project, and I noticed that our group was completely stuck. Right? We couldn't get the traction, and lack of better words, we were stuck in place. And when this happens, when you're stuck in place because everyone on the team or on the project, they start talking in circles, right? And that's what we were doing. We were talking in circles, frustrated, going nowhere. And I said, hey, what if we just tried this? Right? I played the what if game, and I'm not typically a fan of what if, unless it's like intentional. And I was like, hey, just what if we tried this idea? Simple question, right? Nothing profound. I just was tired of hearing everybody argue, and and it felt like every time somebody had an idea, somebody else or two other people had to challenge that, right? And it was, they would bring it up, and the one person would be like, well, I don't like that because, and I agree with that person, I don't like that because. And it just became this circle, and I was like, look, what if we just tried this? And here's what happened. The energy on the team shifted. People started moving. Even someone chimed up and said, yeah, you know what, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen, right? And you'll hear me say that quite often when I start talking to people. One of the things that I'll say is, what's the worst thing they're going to say? No. That's the worst thing, right? And so when we started doing this, I was saying, what's the worst thing that happens? We don't get anywhere? We're already not getting somewhere. And when somebody was like, yeah, let's give it a shot, we started making progress. And I remember thinking to myself, I remember thinking, uh, wow, leading? I didn't really lead anything. I just asked a simple question. And I remember somebody coming to me like, hey, thanks for leading us through that. We were really stuck and it was starting to get really frustrating. And that's when it hit me. I had been waiting for permission to lead. I was waiting for somebody to come along and be like, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and lead that team or lead that project. I was waiting for somebody to come along and say, hey, we now knight you the leader. You now have the title of project leader, supervisor, or manager, or whatever that title is. I was waiting for permission to lead. I was waiting for permission that was never going to come at that point in time, right? I was waiting for permission that was never coming. And here's what I've learned not just by experience, but also by my own studies, right? Leadership isn't something you wait to receive. You don't sit around and wait for leadership. It's something you're already doing, probably multiple times a day without even realizing it. And there's a crazy statistic, and I can't exactly remember the exact number, but it really essentially talks about how we're decision makers as individuals. Whether we're leaders or not leaders, it doesn't matter. Just as people, we're decision makers. And in a typical day, we make thousands of decisions, consciously and subconsciously, whether we know it or not, right? So we're almost leading as if we don't know it, right? It's leading is something you're already doing. And tonight, or if you're watching this on our YouTube, we're going to uncover where you're already leading. Because once you see it, once your eyes are open to these moments that you're already leading with or without the title, everything changes. Everything changes. So here's what we're covering. Okay, we're going to cover 5 things. Okay, the first thing is 3 myths that keep you from seeing your leadership. The second thing we're going to cover is the leadership moments that are already in your day, with or without the title. The third thing that we're going to do is your personal leadership audit. And then we're going to talk about the Ignite strategy. And we're going to start with identify. That's the first thing we do. We identify. In fact, I'll go on a little bit of a tangent. I'm working on a current project, and the first thing I said was I need to identify the gaps. We always start with identify. And then the last thing is your action step for tomorrow. Now, if you've been with us for some time now, or you've watched us on YouTube, or you've talked to us in person, you always hear us say, hey, we don't wait for someday, because someday is not on the calendar. Tomorrow, today, right now, that's what we build for. We don't build for someday, we build for right now. Right? So let's jump in. Let's jump into the 3 myths that are keeping you from seeing your leadership. Okay, now myth number 1. This one gets me every time. Okay, been there, done that, just talked about it. I need a title to be a leader. I need to be this person, CEO. I need to be managers, assistant managers, floor supervisor, whatever. I need a title to be a leader. This is the biggest lie we believe. This is the absolute biggest lie we believe. And I will tell you that I've bought this lie for years, right? Look, at its core, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? Let me say that again. Leadership is influence. Nothing about titles, nothing about positions, straight influence. It doesn't say leadership is a title that's called supervisor manager, but leadership a little bit more with an executive title is more leadership than it is. Nope. Leadership is influence. Let me ask you something. Here we go. Have you ever encouraged someone who was discouraged? Have you ever suggested a better way to do something? Whether they took it or not, have you suggested a better way to do something? Well, hello, welcome. Have you ever stood up for what was right when others stayed silent? Last question I have for you is, have you ever helped someone else see a possibility that they couldn't see? That's leadership. Right there. You've encouraged someone who's discouraged, leadership. You've suggested a better way of doing something, whether they did it or not. Did you suggest a better way? That's leadership. Did you stand up for what was right when others didn't? That's leadership. Did you help somebody see a different perspective or a possibility or a solution that they couldn't see? That's leadership. You didn't say you had to be a supervisor or CEO or anything like that. That's leadership. You influence someone's thinking. You influence someone's emotions. You influence someone's actions. One time I was in this coffee shop, and there was a barista was in training, and they were training someone new, and that new person, you can absolutely tell, like, they got that look on their face where they're like, OMG, right? Clearly overwhelmed, right? And then it's busy, and I'm not a big coffee drinker, so I'm like, I don't even know what I want, right? And you look behind you, the line is backing up. People are like looking at their watch, looking at stuff, right? And you can definitely tell that not only was that person clearly frustrated, but that person training them was just like, was also getting frustrated. Like, there's frustration, there was overwhelm going on. Now, I didn't work there. I've never worked in a coffee shop. In fact, I've only worked in food industry at a restaurant once for a small stint in my teenage years, right? No authority whatsoever, right? But I was able to connect with that barista and just say, hey, you're doing great. Everyone has a first day. You've got this. Breathe. And that person's shoulders, they relaxed, and they were able to take that moment and refocus themselves. And it's not just the person that was feeling overwhelmed, it's also the trainer who is standing there training, who is like, oh my gosh, I've been here for whatever reason and however long, and I'm training this person. The line's out the door. My boss is getting on my tail. We got to make sure these get out right. Oh my goodness, right? And then the trainer's like, okay, focus. Here's the thing, guys. 5 seconds. You're doing great. You've got this. Everybody struggles. 5 seconds, no title, but I influenced that moment. Another example was actually very recent. My wife and I went out for a dinner last night, and it was interesting. We had this very active waiter and very engaging. And you could tell a little bit that he was a little unsure of himself. But my wife and I, being who we are, we joked and we laughed and we connected with him and gave him those moments to just kind of relax. And at the end of the night, he drops this bombshell on us. He goes, hey, you know what? This is my first night alone. I just got out of training, and I really appreciate you guys. Right? Again, no title, no leader, no, like nothing. We just gave that person space to be who they are. We empowered them, right? We led them, right? So it's your turn. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment, and I want you to think about where have you influenced someone over the past week. Not with authority. They didn't listen to you because they had to. They listened to you because they got to. Just with your presence, your words or your actions. Where did you influence someone this past week? Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you just a minute. I want you to drop it in the comments. And if you're like, hey, I don't want to share it publicly, that's fine. But I want to normalize you seeing your influence. So if you don't put it in the comments, that's fine. Write it down on a sticky note, on a pencil, or on a pad and pencil. Right? Write it down. I want you to see. I want you to just think about it. I want you to just think about your influence. That's easy to forget. It's easy for it to leave. I want you to put it in writing. I want you to normalize seeing your influence. Where did you influence someone this past week? I'll give you a second. I'm going to awkwardly stare at you because that's weird, right? In fact, I'm just going to update my notes and ramble on about who knows what while we're waiting for this.
Heart's deepest wishes. Wish blossom.
That was weird. There we go. Now let's jump into the second myth. This is one of my favorites as well. I love when people come to me with this myth. Here it is. Myth number 2. I need to have it all together first. Oh. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this one keeps me stuck, right? I just love this, right? I used to think this. Once I'm more confident, once I know more, once I'm less of a mess, then I'll lead. Truth bomb. Here's the truth. The leaders you admire, the ones you look up to, I'm going to tell you a secret. They're still figuring it out too. I once read this book by John Maxwell called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and he shares stories of his own failures, his own curve. This is a guy who's coached Fortune 500 CEOs, and he's still growing. And he has this quote, and I just absolutely love it. He says, the greatest mistake we make is living in constant fear that we will make a mistake, that we'll make one. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to grow while you influence. And I love that, right? And here's the thing. Kind of a few years ago, I was able to lead a small team project. And it was my first one at this opportunity or this organization. I was terrified. I was nervous. I was up all night. I just was like, for one, didn't really know much about the project. And 2, I was still new, so I didn't know much about the team. I didn't know what I was doing. But when they came to me, I was like, yes, I'll do it. And at that moment, I was like, oh, why? What did I get myself into? So here it comes. First meeting. And I was like, I got this. And then I had this moment where I was like, you don't got this. You're not ready. You're a mess. You don't lead well. Come on. What are you doing? And I fumbled through that first meeting. I forgot half of what I wanted to say, and I could just feel that like awkwardness. You're like, it was so bad. You could feel the awkwardness. But here's the thing. I showed up for the second meeting and the third and the fourth, and I got better. And here's the crazy part. The team didn't really need me to be perfect. They needed me to care. They needed me to show up, and they needed me to keep us moving forward. And that's all they needed from me. So here's a question for you I want you to think about, right? What would you do if you knew you didn't have to be perfect first? What would you do if you knew that you didn't have to come out the gate perfect? I want you to sit with that for a second. What would that look like? It changes it's a game changer when we address the second myth. That you need to have it all together first. You don't. You don't. Now, I promised 3 myths, and I'm going to give you the next one. And I love this. I actually have this own conversation with my wife, and I love this myth because it's so, lack of better words, it's so bad. It's so bad. But we've fallen into this trap. Third myth, here it comes. Leadership is for extroverts or charismatic people. Let me tell you something. Some of the best leaders I know are quiet. They're introverted, and they would never describe themselves as charismatic. Look, leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. Leadership is about being the most intentional. And I'll tell you, like, my wife she's not naturally outgoing, right? She does her best recharge moments alone. And she used to think because of that, it disqualified her as a leader. And then one time she had this moment where she realized that how she listens to people is leadership. How thoughtful she is leadership. And how she sees others and how people can be overlooked, that's leadership too. Different leadership styles, but they're all valid. Here we go. The quiet observer who asks the right question, that's a leader. That's leadership right there. The encourager who sees the potential in others, guess what? That's leadership. The steady presence who keeps showing up, leadership. The truth teller who names what everyone's thinking, as obnoxious and annoying as sometimes that can be, that's leadership. And the servant who helps without being asked, that's leadership. So thinking about those, which one of those resonates with you? Are you the quiet observer who just always asks the right question? Are you the encourager who just sees potential in everyone and just helps encourage those? Are you the steady presence who always shows up? Are you the truth teller who just says what everybody else is thinking? Or are you the servant who is there ready to help without being asked? Here's the point. You don't need to be someone else to lead. You just need to be the most intentional version of you. You don't have to be this charismatic, extrovert, different person to be a leader. Because the people who you lead, they need you. Not some fake person of you. Right? That's what it's all about. And those 3 myths, they're so powerful when you can overcome those 3 myths. And I hope you had a moment to take some notes and write some of those down and think about which one of those myths resonates with you, because we've all fallen victim to one, if not all 3 of them. Now, as we've kind of gone through those myths, now I want to spend some time identifying your leadership moments, right? And this is what we call the leadership audit, all right? And this is where things start getting practical. We've talked about the myths, which are theoretical. We've had some stories, but now it's time to get practical. We're going to look at your actual life and find where you're already leading. Because chances are that you might be struggling in where you're leading. Or you might say, I'm only a leader here, but I lead nowhere else. Right? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to either open up your phone and pull out your notes app or grab a piece of paper, because we're going to do this together. Okay? And what I want you to build or draw out for you is I want you to draw 3 circles. Yeah. Yeah, she can consider herself an introvert. Absolutely. And she doesn't like participating in team meetings and huddles, and she can consider herself an introvert. So during our last meeting, yeah, you can ask them to share their thoughts. Sometimes people just don't feel comfortable. They don't feel dumb, or they're like, I feel stupid to answer this. And I think it's good to give them that opportunity of like, hey, it's great to hear your thought, your perspective on this, because that's leadership as well. Not only for you, but for that person also getting the opportunity to speak up. That's an excellent opportunity. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about 3 circles. And then circle 1, okay? In circle 1, I want you to write home/family, right? And here's something I want you to remember when it comes to your house and your family. Whether that's you live with your family, your extended family, whatever that situation looks like, leadership happens here first, always. At home, in the family, always. And here's the question I want you to consider. Okay? Do you set the emotional tone in your home? What I'm asking is, if you're having a bad day, is everybody else having a bad day too? If you're having a good day, is everybody else having a good day too? Do you set the emotional tone in your home or in your family? If you show up to a family gathering and you're happy, everybody else is gathered. But if you show up and you're cranky or you're tired or you're not, whatever that is, does it change? Does it shift? Do your kids or do your family members watch how you handle stress? When your partner is struggling or somebody in your family is struggling, do you encourage them? And do you make decisions that affect others? Those might be you. Those are some things to quite jot down some notes, right? Yeah, absolutely. I set the emotional tone, or not so much. My kids and my maybe grandkids. Maybe you have little ones in your home. Maybe you have older ones in your home, or maybe you have other people that live in the house with you, right? Do they watch how you handle stress? Do you encourage the people around you who are down? Every morning, I can tell my little one looks to see what kind of day it's going to be, right? If I wake up and I'm kind of cranky or I'm stressed, he feels it. If I'm calm and collected and present, he feels that too. That's leadership. Okay? So in that circle, write down one way you influence your home environment. And I love that. She jumped in because it was the first time someone asked her. She turned out to be a talker. I love that. And, that's a great leadership moment, because as leaders, it's our job to identify the people who are just quiet. I just need that moment. They need that stage. They need somebody to say, hey, you should absolutely talk about this, or you should answer this, and give them that moment. That's great. That's great. One way you influence your home environment. Now, in that second circle, this one's called work, your school, or team, right? Wherever that could be. It could be your job if you're in college, or your school. You can put it there. Your team, if you're on a sports team or something like that. This is kind of all encompassing, right? And this is where most people start to see it, right? So here's some things that you want to consider in this circle. Do people ask you for your opinion? Do they ask you for your thoughts? Do you help solve problems? Now, if you're at the school, I'm not talking about oh yeah, I do homework, I solve problems. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, are you helping people solve their issues, their problems? Maybe they're having an issue with a friend, or they're struggling to come up with a solution, or things like that. Do you help solve problems? Do you make new people feel welcome? This is huge. Do you make the new person feel welcome? do you stay positive when other people complain? This is also a big one. When other people are going down, are you going down with them, or are you staying positive? And do you follow through when you say you'll do something? I know I know a leader doesn't have any direct reports, right? It's, not a manager, right? But everyone goes to this person when they need help because, well, they actually listen and help them think through problems, right? That's leading constantly. No title, no direct reports, right? Just working. But people know that they can get help and they can feel welcomed and things like that. And that's leadership right there. That's constant leadership, right? So here's what I want you to do in that circle. Name one way you influence your work or team environment. Now, before I go into the third circle, I'm going to say this. We talked about this at Ignite. That influence is leadership. That can also be good or bad. Right? So when you ask these questions, let's just go back and say, do you stay positive when others complain? That question could be, are you complaining and bringing others down? As much as we like to think that our leadership is always positive, it is not. Sometimes we negatively lead others, and that's something we have to think about too when we're talking about this. I tend to stay on the positive side, but we are human. We do have negative emotions sometimes. We do have negative interactions. The question then is that your leadership style? Are you complaining when it's your role to be positive? Not saying that's any of you, just asking that question. Just asking. Circle 3 is your community, your friendships, or maybe even it's online, right? This one's a little sneaky because it kind of feels informal. Especially when we're talking about community and friendships and maybe online, comment section on somebody's post or on YouTube videos or on Reddit threads or, whatever, right? Asking here, here's some questions to consider for this one is, do your friends come to you for advice? Do you speak up about things that matter? Do you invite people in or do you connect people together at all? This is an interesting question. This is more towards our kind of our social media platforms and our online environments. Is do you share content that helps others grow? Now, this is a huge piece in today's day and age. I feel like sometimes you get on social media and it's like everybody's got to make sure they have their 2 cents on or something instead of are you sharing to help somebody grow? And are you someone people trust? And I want to go back to social media because even your social media presence is leadership. When you share something hopeful, someone sees it. When you're authentic about your struggle, someone feels less alone. I want you to remember that. When you're typing up that comment or you're posting that post or whatever, it's not just about you on social media. You're being hopeful. Someone sees that. My wife went on a whole gratitude challenge, and she still does it. She was doing it daily, and now she's doing it kind of intermittently a little bit. But you just don't know what that gratitude, where it extended to others, and how much they saw maybe things that she was grateful for that they're like, oh yeah, I'm grateful for that too. Or when she shared a struggle and she was grateful for the outcome, how many people were like, yeah, I've been there, done that, and I can't wait for my outcome to be like that. All right. Regardless, that's influence. And what we've learned is that leadership is influence. So how do you influence your community or friendships? These 3 circles get this opportunity to really kind of let you see your influence. Now, outside of our 3 circles, I'm going to have us look at the leadership moment scanner, is what we call it. Now, we're going to focus on yesterday. Literally yesterday. I know it was Sunday, right? I want you to think about your day. And I want you to just identify quick 3 to 5 moments where you influenced someone or something. And it might be tiny. That's okay. In the last 24 hours, I've responded to a text message where someone was struggling, and I encouraged that person. It took me 2 minutes. I ran into a coworker that was having a interesting meeting where they were engaging in the meeting a little, I would call it cranky. And I chose not to be frustrated with that person. I kept that energy positive and in the grand vision of things, right? I used influence through restraint, I guess you can call that. And I made a decision about how I can spend my evening helping my wife versus what I need to do. Right? All leadership moments, all small, all counted. What's your 3 to 5 moments in the last 24 hours where you influence someone or something? Absolutely think about that. And then when you do that, I want you to think about how did that make you feel? Did you find more than you expected? Absolutely. Now, we talked about our myths, right? We talked about 2 ways of what we call the leadership audit. We did 2 different exercises, right? We're still working on one, that moment scanner from the last 24 hours. We did our 3 circles, right? Now we kind of jump into our framework, our Ignite framework. And our Ignite framework starts with identify. So here's why identify comes first and why it matters so much. You can't grow what you don't see. Most people aren't stuck because they lack leadership ability. They're stuck because they don't recognize they're already leading. The Ignite framework starts with identify because awareness is the foundation of everything else, right? We talk about this several times, the law of the lid. Your leadership ability determines your level of effectiveness. But here's the thing. You can't raise your lid if you don't know where it currently is. Now, identifying where you're already leading shows you a couple of things. It shows you your current baseline. We had a question last week in our sessions where it was like, hey, how do I manage up? How do I lead up? Well, let's talk about identifying where you're currently at, where you're leading now, right? So when you start identifying where you're already leading, it shows you your current baseline. It shows you your natural strengths. It shows you your spheres of influence, right? How far out your influence goes. Here's the best part. It shows your opportunity to grow. Okay, now, to do this, to identify, we ask 3 questions. First question we start asking is, where am I already influencing? That's question number 1. Where am I already influenced? Let's drop that in here. Boom. Where am I already influencing? And we just did this exercise, right? This is your awareness, kind of expanding your awareness. And write those places down. Where am I already influencing? And review those weekly. It's good to know where you're currently at. Now, here's the second question, and I'll drop this in the chat. What kind of leader am I becoming? Now, this isn't to be confused of what kind of leader do I want to be, but what is my current influence creating? Right? I'm not asking you, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be more like? I'm asking you what's currently happening, because we're just identifying what leadership influence, what's your influencing currently creating? And are people better or worse after being around you? That's a sour spot. That's a tough question, but it's so necessary. Are people better or worse after being around you? Now, I've had to ask myself honestly, the double C's, am I complaining or am I creating? Essentially, am I being critical or am I being encouraging? And am I making things better, or am I just an observer? That's been hard. But when I asked myself that question, it has changed everything. With every moment, every interaction, am I making things better? Am I complaining or am I creating? Am I being critical or am I encouraging? Now, our third question is this one here. Who is watching me that I don't realize? This one is an interesting question, right? So I think about it like this. You have parents or you have kids and you're a parent, your kids are watching you. You got a new employee or a new person in your circle, they're watching the more experienced ones. Younger people watching the older people, more experienced people. Peers watching peers. I don't know about you. Sometimes I look and I'm like, all right, what are we doing? In fact, on Friday, I had this opportunity to sit down with another person who shares a similar role for me, and I've never had this opportunity to speak with this person. And I wasn't so much as watching that person because we were at dinner and I wasn't trying to learn how to eat, but I was asking them questions and kind of just listening to their stories and kind of taking that in because this person has had more experience than me in that role, and I was taking that moment to grow and learn something. Here's the truth, the bottom truth. Someone is learning from you right now, today. The question then comes in is, what are you teaching them? Now, once we have those three questions, we really go into like this identification practice. Because here's the thing, and I've been through stuff like this, and I know you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And those are great three questions, and I need to identify. And then here comes next Thursday, and you're like, oh, I did that. It was fun, but I'm kind of not doing it anymore. Here's what I have to do every single day. Not saying that I do it every single day, but I strive to do this every single day. I do an end of the day leadership check. Now, most of the time, I'll actually do this on my drive home. And here is what I do. I ask myself, where did I lead today? Now, I have it right here that I write down 2-3 moments. I don't always write them down, but I do think about, where did I lead today? And then I ask, how did I influence someone? And I typically try to name that person by name and the impact, because I tend to remember stories more than anything else and the impact, and it kind of creates that emotional state. So I name that person, and then I talk about that impact with myself. I go through that. And then I look at, what opportunity did I miss? And there's been plenty of times where I start with that one and I try not to, because I really want to focus on some of that positive stuff first. I know I'm a sucker for starting positive, but I don't ignore the pieces that I miss, right? What opportunity did I miss today? And then the fourth one, which is so important, what will I do differently tomorrow? And I could probably go through 5 or 6, 10 things that I'll do differently tomorrow, but I try to focus just on one thing. Tomorrow, I'm going to do this. And sometimes it's repairing a mistake that I made today, and that's okay. That's okay. And here's why I do this. This really has helped me train my brain to see those leadership moments happening in real time. When I start identifying them daily, I start to really see how things are working in real time. It also builds awareness that really compounds over time. And then I really can start picking out, like, where my leadership skills are really well and where I'm having some challenges and maybe I need to do a little bit of work on that, right? Because you get data from that. We get data. Now, we'll talk more about data later on in one of our sessions. Out of our 12 sessions, we'll talk about that. But here's the thing, the most important piece of why this works and what it does for me. It keeps me humble and it keeps me hungry. I'm telling you right now, if you did this for 7 days straight, you'll see your leadership completely differently. It'll be a complete flip. You'll absolutely see your leadership in a different light. Okay? Now, we're going to do something that might feel a little uncomfortable, but I promise it's powerful. You can put it in our chat if you so choose. But I want you to complete the sentence, and I wrote it down on my notes so that way I can just drop it in the chat. I want you to complete the sentence. Here we go. I'm a leader because I influence blank through blank. Now, you can put it in the chat if you want. You can share with us if you want. Or you can say it out loud, wherever you're at. I'm a leader because I influence blah, blah, blah through blah, blah, blah. I'm a leader because I influence my team through my willingness to help and listen. I'm a leader because I influence my community through my encouragement. What is yours? What is yours? And don't get it confused. This isn't arrogance, right? This is owning the truth of your influence. There's a huge difference between owning the truth of your leadership, of your influence and leadership, versus being arrogant. I am a leader because I influence aspiring leaders through authentic, practical leadership content that helps them see that they're already leading. Write it, say it, own it, declare it. Declare it. Now, here's what happens next. This isn't just one of those sessions that you watch and forget. This is the beginning of leadership evolution. I'm a leader because I influence everyone to be the positive change they want to see in the workspace. Chef's kiss, that's beautiful. I love this because you didn't just say change, right? You were very specific. I am a leader because I influence everyone to be the positive change. Leadership is influence, right? You can absolutely influence everyone to be the negative change. But no, you were very specific. The positive change they want to see in the workspace. I love that. That is a beautiful, beautiful statement. And I love how you declared it right there in the chat for all of us to share that moment with you, because it is absolutely powerful. This isn't just a session you watch and forget, though, or a YouTube video that you watch, you listen to, and you walk away from. This is the beginning of your leadership evolution. Okay? Your week 1 challenge. And I'm going to drop it in the chat question by question. Okay, here we go. I want you to do the end of day leadership check. The one I talked about. It's this one right here. Boom. Coming at you. Where did I lead today? How did I influence someone? What opportunity did I miss? Do not skip that one. Most people hate reflection. Don't be most people. And what will I do differently tomorrow? That's action planning. Don't skip out on those. Okay, and the second thing I want you to do is I want you to post one leadership moment you identified this week. I want you to post it. I want you to get on and be that positive change on social media. In a world full of negativity, I want you to one leadership moment. And we were never meant to lead and do things alone, so I want some accountability. So here's what you're going to do. Tell one person you're doing this challenge and ask them to check in with you. Boss, a peer, it doesn't matter. Friend, a child. And I have a bonus part for your challenge this week. I want you to text someone you influenced. Or email them. Or if you sit across from them. And I want you to thank them for letting you be part of the journey. I know it feels weird. You don't have to say that. You're going to be like, oh, thanks for letting me be part of the journey. No, just be like, hey, it was great having that conversation with you yesterday. It was so good to get to know you, get to know more of you. Or it was awesome being able to solve that challenge together. Or it was great to talk to you about that project. Whatever. That's amazing. Oh, we have another. I'm a leader because I influence my peers and leaders through compassion and positive support and appreciation. I love it. Through compassion. That is essential. That is essential. Leadership is about people, compassion, and positive support and appreciation. That is excellent qualities that make up solid leaders. Compassion is the big C that every leader should absolutely have. In all situations, compassion has to be evident because we work with people, and people follow those they care. Right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. 100%. Here's the thing. You're not just learning about leadership. You're becoming a leader. You're not in here learning. This isn't math class. You're not becoming, when you go to math class, you're not becoming a mathematician. You're just learning math. Well, here's the deal. You're not just learning leadership. You are becoming a leader who sees their influence and uses it intentionally. That's the difference between wishing you were a leader and actually being one. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap this up. Next week, next Monday, we're diving into session 2, the One Skill Challenge. A One Skill Challenge. This is part of the grow phase of Ignite. We're going to talk about why trying to improve everything at once kills your progress, and how mastering one skill can in the next 30 days, what would you create the biggest impact? So it sounds like my mic went out for a second, probably because I tapped the top of it because it's super sensitive. We're going to talk about, next week we're going to talk about while trying to improve everything at once kills your progress, and how mastering one skill can transform your entire leadership. And before we get there, I want you to spend this week building that awareness. You have to start with identifying it, right? But next week, here's a question for you. This will be kind of gearing you up, priming you for next week. If you can improve only one leadership skill in the next 30 days, what would create the biggest impact? Yesterday, I had an officer come in and he was bummed about his dad being sick. Oh, that's rough. He lost his dog as well as the day before he came into work. I immediately empathized with him and asked him to take some time to himself and walk or call his wife for encouragement. He came back and thanked me and expressed his appreciation. He was able to finish his entire shift and asked if he wanted to leave beforehand. And that's great. That's leading right there, right? That's leading right there. You're not the boss, right? You're just a peer. But you're leading because you showed that compassion and you gave that empathy. And you gave him some things to do that would help encourage. Go talk to your wife. Go for a walk. Man, that's good. That's powerful leadership right there. It's those moments. We talk about it. I brought it up a few times. Last week we got a question about leading up or managing up. Look, that's it right there. That's it right there. Now, in that story, that's a peer, but what if that was your boss? Right? What if you just changed it? It wasn't one of my peers, it was my boss. It's so powerful. That is powerful. Let me leave you with this. You picked up a lot of leadership wisdom just by living every day. Maybe this has happened by watching others, or by making mistakes, or by caring about people. The question really isn't, am I a leader? That shouldn't be the question in your mind. The question is, what am I going to do with the leadership that's already in me? I had this question and I shared it with my team, and I want to share it with all of you. And it stemmed from a conversation I had with someone recently, right? And here's what it says. They were focused on growing and learning something for a talent that they simply didn't have. They just didn't have the skill. And this kind of dips in a little bit next week. Here's what I asked that person. What are you doing with what you have? Here's the thing. What am I going to do with the leadership that's already in me? What are you already doing with what you have? Because leadership's not about titles. It's not about positions. It's not about flow charts and beautiful graphs. It's about one life influencing another. Case in point, this amazing situation that we talked about in our chat. Your life is already influencing others. Let's make it count. I believe in you. Now, the rest of the week, I want you to identify your leadership moments. We'll see you next week to talk about the One Skill Challenge. Hit us up at Ignite because we believe that leadership is more than strategy if you didn't catch a hold of that. It's about people. Hands down, it's about people. We partner with leaders to spark influence, to unite teams, and to create cultures that last. Because here's the thing, when leaders grow, teams and organizations flourish. And that's what we're here for. Feel free to reach out to us. You can always catch us at our Where to Start page. You can always reach out to us at any time. Be glad to chat with you. And until then, until we either hear from you or next week, go out and lead because you're already doing it. Thanks, y'all.